Three, two, one, and how's it going, Jordan?
Great. Thank you. How are you?
We're doing good. Just started Spooktober. It's September and October together, so I've been enjoying making a bunch of pumpkin-themed treats. Healthy, obviously, protein mixed pumpkin pancakes and stuff, but it's been super fun.
That's awesome. I know we start doing that here soon with my kids. I have 4 kids, so we'll start all of the Halloween festivities pretty soon.
Yeah, your kids are pretty rambunctious bunch, so
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not crawling on you right now. But they're really great, man.
I'm secluded. I'm away. Doors are locked. So
So for those who don't know you personally, can you provide a little rundown what you've been up to for the last decade and how you basically have transitioned to becoming an entrepreneur and offering instruction on how others can do that as well?
Yeah. So just some background about me. I've been after college football, after I got done with college sports, I dabbled into some sales, right? And so I worked at a call center for a few years. I became the #1 sales representative at the call center. I broke the commission scale record, the highest paying salesman at the company. I won multiple awards, one of a trip of a lifetime to Bora Bora, where I took my wife. Then I discovered kind of the sales industry, the door-to-door side. Got into the door-to-door space with Vivint. When I saw what people were making, again, I was making just 6 figures a year in the call center, and thought, hey, that's some pretty good money. But then when I started to find out that people were making 6 figures within a summer, I was like, there's no way that's happening. And then I had some friends and former teammates that were doing door-to-door, who introduced me to door-to-door. And that's when I saw the pay stubs and what you could potentially make within a summer. And so that's when I left my call center job that I was making 6 figures a year on to go pursue this door-to-door sales job, right? Where my first summer I went out and made 6 figures within a summer. And then at that point, it kind of took off for me where I figured out that sales is what I was good at. Stayed within the door-to-door side, and then I ended up starting my own solar company just a few years ago. I also got into the e-commerce space, so I own my own e-commerce company as well as a credit repair company, as well as a funding company, right? So essentially we help people build business and personal capital that they could use towards assets that would generate them passive income, right? And so within the last 5 years, we were able to develop a few different companies that all essentially integrated together, right? And so, but it all started from just a sales background and perfecting my craft as a salesman, right? And then just going into more products that would provide more of a service is what I wanted to do with it. And that's where solar came into play. That's where the e-commerce space came into play, credit repair, LLCs. Again, we do a lot with LLCs. But yeah, that's kind of been the journey and where I started is in the sales space. So,
we've pretty much followed each other. I think it'd be okay, but we served in the same mission together, and so we've kind of just been following each other loosely over the years. And so I remember seeing you post some videos about basically doing the door-to-door again. What was that like in a non-service capacity?
I enjoyed it so much just because I love my mission. And it was very similar to how my mission was serving, with you obviously in Alabama. Is we did a lot of door knocking, a lot of attracting, right? And that's where a lot of the cool memories for me, at least, came from my mission, was knocking a bunch of doors every day. And so getting into the door-to-door space, man, it was just reminded me so much of my mission, where I was able to create so many relationships with customers on the door. And by knocking on people's doors in multiple different states came a lot of missionary opportunities too, right? Where we were able to talk about the gospel, invite people to church, right? It's obviously a lot of the questions for me is, where are you from? What are your beliefs? Oh, you're from Utah. Oh, you must be a Mormon, right? And so those are all kind of how conversations start when you're doing door to door. And so I think that's where the love came into play. Is it was just very similar to my mission.
And you've already got that break-in of disappointment of, no thanks. That's already been done. That's already in the past. But I remember you doing that, and I'm like, man, he's going after it. He's hustling. So, and I feel like you as your personality itself is very hustle. Like you've got that mentality. Where do you think you found that? Do you think it's from your culture, your parents? That hustler mindset.
Yeah, 1,000%. I would say my mom. Right, my mom just recently passed away over Memorial Weekend in May due to cancer. But my mom was someone that just figured it out. Right, 6 kids, adopted 2 foster kids, right? Was kind of a single mother, where we were able to we never realized that we lived in government housing. We never realized that we didn't have money, but she was able to provide everything for us, making us think that we had a lot of money, right? But it was the work ethics that my mom had to just figure it out and get it done, right, for a larger purpose. And so I think it factors down to what is your why, right? The why factor is so important, where the why factor is going to drive you to just figure it out, right? When your back is against the wall and you have 6 children and 2 foster kids that you've adopted, you're going to figure it out, right? Her back was against the wall, I think, the majority of our lives. So my mom was 1,000% the example of the definition of work ethics, right? And so I think that's where the drive comes from. And all my siblings and I, we all own our own businesses, right? We're all entrepreneurs. And I think another reasoning behind that is we did whatever we could to spend more time with each other, right? So we developed these careers and these businesses, knowing that, hey, any day could be the last day for our mother, right? And so we needed to go on grind mode and shift it into a different gear and create more revenue, right? More income, so we can spend more time with our mother, right? Knowing that any day could be her last, right? And she fought cancer since 2016, and every year they told her, this is your last year, right? This is your last year. There's no way you make it past this chemo. But she beat it over and over and over again. Or again, it just demonstrated her fight, her work ethic to keep going, right? And so I think, again, 1,000%, it was my mom who taught us how to work hard. So,
yeah. God bless. I hope your family's still doing good. They always say you can tell the caliber of a person by how they're remembered. And I remember seeing something on Facebook. It wasn't even from you, but your mom came up because you know how the algorithm's always trying to get you to see different things. So I thought that was really cool. It really shows like what kind of a woman your mother was. So you can clearly tell she will be missed. Transitioning from a more somber topic. So your schooling, you ended up playing college football. How do you feel that impacted your leadership abilities transitioning into this like entrepreneur position?
I think just mentally, just kind of, sports will mentally, not only physically, but mentally break you down, right? And so you become mentally tough. You learn how to fight through the injuries. You learn, how to push through the fourth quarter when, you're tired and you feel like you have nothing left in the gas tank, right? Sports teaches you mentally to kick it into a different gear, right? So it's not only the leadership, within sports. Obviously I was, a captain in so many years playing football, a leader on my team, but I think it's the sports itself really taught me specifically how to be mentally tough, right? And sports really does that for you. And then when you transition that into door knocking or missionary work or, the sales world, it's a very cutthroat industry, right? You're constantly getting objections. You're constantly getting doors slammed on you, right? But it's because of sports and my background within football, where I was able to, hey, one more door, hey, one more door, hey, one more door, right? You just become mentally tough and you learn how to fight through it and keep pushing. So I think, I give a lot of credit to my sports background on creating that mentality for me of just beast mode, right? There's a saying, it's beast mode or no mode. And so there's only one mode for me, and that's beast mode, right? And so it's just kind of instilled in my mind is it's always beast mode. So.
For you being in college football, I know every American boy's big dream is to be go pro NFL or NBA. Was that something that you were wanting and it just didn't pan out? Or was it something where you went, maybe this really isn't for me, I want to do something else? And how do you feel that also kind of impacted your approach to businessship? That's every kid's dream. That was my dream. That was my dream for sure. Right? I played football my entire life. Right? So the dream was always to make it to the NFL. But towards the end of my career playing college football is when I ended up getting married. My wife was pregnant with our first son. That's also when my mom got diagnosed with her cancer. So I think the importance switched for me, right? Of kids. This was my dream to go play NFL, but I have now, a son on the way that's about to be born, and a mom who's fighting cancer. So I think for me, it was a mind switch of, hey, I needed to hang up the cleats and figure out how I was going to be able to make some income to support my wife and my newborn. So again, it just came down to a decision where I ended up obviously just hanging up the cleats and pursuing a career to support my family. But yeah, it was always a dream. It's kind of weird. Growing up, my parents always told me like we have these doors and bridges in life, and I'm always a visual person. It's almost like the Scooby-Doo thing where you open a door and sometimes there's a monster there, and sometimes it's just a door to another door. It's interesting how these things kind of work out. In the military, they kind of talk about like to get the assignment you want or the duty or different job, you have to have like the stars aligned because you have to have like your date of enlistment and your date of rank and certain things where it just doesn't pan out. And for me, I've been the person where the stars haven't aligned. There's been something that's out of whack that it doesn't work. And it's just kind of frustrating because you're like, if it was just only this way, but I'm kind of a strong believer in they work out the way that they're supposed to. And there's something to be learned in that for yourself or you to be the example for someone else. So really coming to terms with that can be kind of hard. Like there's been dreams I've had that just didn't work out. So, but I think lamenting the days past is kind of a wasteful mindset because you're expending energy that you could expend on doing something more productive. And I feel like that's where like the adversary tries to get us.
Absolutely.
And we both have a peer. I don't want to name drop them, but they had a very interesting run in the NFL where they gave up a door to play college ball, and then they ended up getting drafted. And if I recall, they were on that team for some time. They're doing well. And then some family stuff kind of spurred the decision to put in a request transfer to another team. And then last I saw, they ended up going back to that first door that was like open almost 7 or 8 years ago. And I'm like, this man's wild. He's wild. So I think that's really cool. He's living everyone's dream.
He is.
Now, my wife and I are hoping to get stationed in Florida. And so she's been following the Buccaneers because she's like, oh, the pirate team. So last time I followed them was when Warren Sapp was sacking quarterbacks left and right. Okay. That was a long time ago. But she's the sport person in my family. I think that's because she's Brazilian. So they're more sport inclined. I'm always like, I didn't even know this was going on. So, but yeah, I think it's really cool. I've worked for some military officers that played for the U.S. Air Force team. So it's just kind of, where they're like, I knew I had no chance going pro, or some of them were just like, my dad's grandpa had served in the military next to George Washington. So I had to. So it's just different how things work out. So,
and the Air Force, man, they had some dogs over there. I mean, I played against them when I was at BYU, and they were always a tough team to go against. And so, tough guys over there.
Yeah, I think it's just a little unfair that they can just ask the Jets to, fly over the game real fast. I feel like show of force. But it's just kind of different. I'm from Colorado originally, so seeing the sport, I think I've been to two or three of those games. Not quite sure, but it's different. So you come home, you've dealt with these things, and then you start working for a security company, sales job, and then started to see I can make more on my feet, and then went and tested it. You saw that. When did you kind of feel like you should try to start your own business and start kind of becoming your own boss per se?
I started to make that switch to try to figure out how to do it myself. Being a part of these major corporate companies, and again, I was a part of a handful of major corporate companies. You come to realize, how you just kind of mean nothing to them, right? And that you're very replaceable. And I just didn't like that feeling of being a part of a company that had complete control over, my pay, right? And so there were so many situations where I helped start, a a company, an alarm company, a solar company, where a lot of these corporate companies just weren't honoring your pay. They weren't honoring a lot of different things, and they had complete control over that, where it was really up to them. And then when I started to really study the laws of money, one of the very first laws of money is, the person that gives the money has the control. The person that accepts the money, that takes the money, has no control, right? And so the person that will always give the money, be the giver in the situation, has complete control over everything, right? Just like the banks, they have a complete control over a lot of things. And so I was building all of these companies, or being a part of these major corporate companies, and helping them build this empire. And in exchange, they weren't being transparent on the pay, right? And so nothing against them. I just ended up leaving, and then started to create my own sales organization that we wanted to build off of, transparency and good communication, and mastering the pay for all of our sales representatives would be paid on time, right? There's one thing that I feel like you should never mess up, and that's pay, right? You shouldn't mess that up, especially when a lot of your employees are married and have kids and newborns and pregnant wives. That's one thing you should never, I feel like, mess up. And that was going on a lot with a lot of these major corporate companies, was just lack of pay, inconsistency of pay, and then just the untransparency of, hey, where did my paycheck go? Right? And then they just give you the runaround. So that's when I started to transition and build up my own organization, employees, and business. So that was the major switch.
Yeah, I think for school, I'm just a fan of taking the classes I'm in school for, and so sometimes when I see a class on the program, I'm not excited. One of them was ethics and values, because I feel like a lot of it is more political correctness. But the class surprised me, because it really wasn't, and it allowed critical thinking on the students' parts to draw their own conclusions. And so we actually ended up doing a lot of business ethic reviews and stakeholder analysis of various companies. And I think the two companies that stand out the most to me are based in Seattle. You have the one that was the credit company where the owner, Dan Price, said, I'm going to pay my employees everything from the janitor to the CFO. We're all going to make the same amount of money. We're all going to take a percentage of any profits that we have. And people were left and right saying, your company's going to fail. You can't do that. It's not going to work. And here he is. He's opening up more companies and pioneering in that aspect. And then we have Starbucks coffee, which is very politically correct, is always kind of like siding politically to one side. And then at the same time, they're very anti-unionist, and they have very sketchy things. And they're always in the news of the CEO like, oh, I'm pro-union, but I want those to work for me. It's like, which is it, my man? So you just have a dichotomy of the mindset in business. I saw a pretty disgusting video of an Australian, one of the richest men in Australia, talking about the workers are getting too much power. And so therefore, those who have the means should restrict their access to monetary funds to let them know who's in charge. And so I was like, wow.
Yeah.
My man's never read about French history. Marie Antoinette, my guy, you probably should go watch that movie. It's just so weird how people act within business, where you have such diversity in how things work out and that. And I've seen I've worked for some companies have done some sketchy things too. So it's just interesting how that pans out. And
it's unfortunate, but I think it's just like everything else from the beginning of, of me not playing football, right? It's just, I think everything just happens for a reason. Just like what you said, right? It's, things are, meant to happen, and it just always comes out to become a blessing. And so that's what it's been for sure.
I had a moment where in Japan, a lot of the businesses will have car garages, and I was like on the third floor. And I pulled into a parking spot, and for some reason I came out, my car battery was dead as dead. And I sat there with the hood up and was trying to get these Japanese people to, hey, do you mind jump starting it? And for the life of them, they could not just help me, give me a quick jump and it'll be good. It wouldn't have worked out well because that battery was dead as dead. So, anyway, I think we do have the opportunity where some things happen to us, not because we need the lesson, but because God knows that we can deal with a dead car battery, but we are being allowed the opportunity to give someone else the opportunity to provide service.
I love that. Yeah.
When that caveat hit, I was like so upset and angry and bitter, and things work out that, I've seen that a lot in my life. There was a particular course, statistics. I don't think it was the class was hard. It was just the instructor's standards were so high. It was unbelievable with what he was expecting out of the 9 weeks. And I was really struggling. In the previous week, I got like an 80 in this class, and I was like, oh, it's going to affect my GPA. It's going to knock me out of honors society. I was just super stressed. And he sent me an email that was just kind of really harsh. And so here I am, I'm working on Saturday night. I go in and I basically spend all day typing, and I save the document. I think I saved the document, and a habit I've developed is just to double check my assignments before I upload them. And I double checked, and half my assignment was gone. It did not save, and I could not recover the file. And I was just so angry. I was like, I just need to go to the gym. So I go to the gym, and I'm walking around the track, and randomly on YouTube is a channel I've never watched before. And it's going over that very topic. And he explained it in such a way that I immediately realized I would have gotten another very low marked down grade on that assignment because I didn't understand this particular aspect of statistics correctly. And so I go back home, I go to church the next day, I finish it in the afternoon, and I publish it at like 10 p.m. at night, and I go to work the next day. I ended up getting a 99 on that assignment. And at first I was very upset and bitter, like, why God, why would you let this happen to me? But sometimes things happen to us for our benefit because we don't have that perspective. Because if I had it my way, I would have had an 80 at least because I missed a core thing. And then later, that proved the point to me even further was that same professor emailed me and said I was the only student in the class that mentioned that aspect. So I was the only one that got a high mark grade.
Wow. That's
so
awesome.
I was like, oof. So I've learned not to be so reactive when things happen because I don't know what's going on and I can't see that perspective. So kind of transitioning to jumping into starting a company. Now that you've had this experience and you've started to kind of teach people to do, can you talk about your companies that you're running right now as far as gearing for building entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So I ended up creating Wave Capital Investments, which is kind of the main holding company. And essentially the Wave Capital Investments is basically an umbrella of all of my other companies. And so I have Wave Energy, which is my solar company. And we're in a handful of states right now, doing pretty well. Then I have my Wave Capital Investments e-commerce business where we build people's Amazon FBA stores, and we help them receive passive income on the Amazon FBA side. And then we also have our LLCs, right? And so essentially what we did is we found a problem where, we filing LLCs as an entrepreneur is very important. But there are only a few states that have the tax benefits that we want, right? Which is Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware, right? Those are the top 3 states where most businesses will try to file their LLCs. So essentially what we did is we combined the 3 legislation laws of Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware, and we created that to American Samoa, where I'm from, right? Where American Samoa has always been a part of the American territory. And because it's part of the American territory, in this situation, it would be considered as another state, right? And so now we're able to take these legislation laws of the 3 best states for entrepreneurs to file their LLCs, create it to American Samoa, where people in the U.S., actually worldwide, can now file their LLCs to American Samoa and reap all the no state LLC tax benefits as if you were living in Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware. And so again, all of that basically falls under the umbrella of Wave Capital Investments. We're getting into the real estate side of things, the creative financing side of things for real estate. But that, again, it just all kind of falls in within the same boat. Again, it just kind of all integrates with each other under one umbrella. So,
with filing in American Samoa, obviously there's going to be economic benefits to the peoples there. So that's really interesting. I didn't know that when you did that you were combining these different. So did you have to go to the politicians within American Samoa and present this to like a Congress of sort to get these laws passed? And how is that?
Yeah, so it was a 6-year development. Again, I have an uncle who I'm named after, who's been in the government. He's a city manager. He was a city manager for Eagle Mountain, Utah, for I believe 10, 12 years, and he's now the city manager for Las Cruces, New Mexico. So he kind of created this opportunity because he understands a lot of the legislation laws and he has a direct communication with American Samoa, and so he was able to speak to the Congress and get all of this passed, right? And so we're now one of the only LLCs that's a .gov, so we're a government issued website.
Oh wow!
So, yeah. So our website is llc.as.gov. So we're one of the only ones that is government backed. So we're an actual government website.
That's crazy. Guaranteed you're showing up in some economics course book soon. That is interesting. I know a lot of
fun. Sorry, go ahead.
I know there's a lot of different things moving around. You get onto TikTok or Facebook or YouTube, and there's a 30-second clip of some guy trying to convince you why you need to break up your company into different LLCs and have them all managed. It's just kind of interesting how that kind of works and benefits. Here's a question. Say you have an individual. What are some indicators that they should go ahead and decide that, I need to make this official and form an LLC?
Well, there's never a reason. I guess my recommendation for a lot of my clients and those who, because I get a lot of people reaching out to me on social media in regards to the LLC, is, again, you don't need to essentially have a business that's generating you income in order to form yourself an LLC. Like, I have multiple LLCs I've set up all of my kids with LLCs. I think every household should have an LLC to establish business credit, right? Because by building business credit, right, there's so many benefits. Because essentially, you want everything off of your personal name and move them to these LLCs, right? And so there's a saying, own everything, but own nothing, right? And so you want nothing in your name, but you want all of your businesses to have all of these assets, right? It's less liability for yourself. But at the same time, you're building business credit where you can go on a brand new LLC, on a brand new EIN number, and go to the bank and get $50,000 with 0% interest. And then you can take that $50,000 and go buy you an asset like real estate that'll start generating you passive income. And the good thing about business is, like, if you're $50,000 in debt on your personal credit cards, that affects your credit. When you're $50,000 in debt on the business side of things, that doesn't affect your credit, right? There's no utilization. There's no debt to income when the business has the debt, and it doesn't affect you, right? And so, I own, almost 57 credit cards on the business side of things, right? And how I purchase all of my assets is I always use credit cards, right, for my business. And so, I think everyone should have an LLC and building business capital.
So what you're saying is my podcast, I should get an LLC going for it to roll out merchandise. Yes. Okay.
1,000%.
It's really interesting. I think the biggest thing for me is for military members in general. It's very hard to start businesses on the side because of the way things work. They get very antsy about you trying to get a second job even. You have to get a whole bunch of permissions for it. So it's kind of interesting. So not that I'm generating a ton of revenue through the podcast, but it was just an example I had in my head. That's really cool about networking. As a kid, when I heard that phrase, I think I started hearing that like before the mission. You need a network. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. But as I've gotten older, biggest regret I've had was like, oh, I know somebody that worked in this. What was their name? I don't have any of their information. I'm sure they could help me. So literally just networking and putting yourself out there is a huge benefit. Now I have a question. You're in Utah. Do you think that there's a reason why we see so many new businesses pop up in Utah? Is it just fertile? I've heard the state kind of is backwards for new companies, but it just seems like left and right, I'm seeing advertisements for new businesses. Like Crumble Cookie wasn't a thing when I was living there. So,
I think Utah is a very unique place. Everyone here is this entrepreneurial driven. I don't know why a lot of businesses are being formulated here in Utah. I don't know, but it's, I visit a lot of different states to go visit a lot of my solar teams. And there's no place like Utah where everyone is being creative. Everyone is starting businesses. Everyone is networking. Everyone has an amazing idea. There's so many entrepreneurs here that are just creating businesses. I just met a guy that's making $200,000 a month by taking trash cans to the curbs. All right, so he's making $200,000 a month by subscription-based, by taking people's trash cans to their curb. Right, so there's just so many different ideas that people are coming up with, where people are just, making a great amount of money. And I feel like I've never been anywhere else where everyone is on this grind of creating, of building, of starting businesses. Utah is very unique. I
think there might be interplay of cross-sectionality the major religion, Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, and some of our tenets in that just kind of influences us. Because I mean, if we go back to Joseph Smith Jr., he was very entrepreneurial in his mindset. In fact, if you're not inclined to believe he's a prophet, you can't argue that he wasn't a businessman. He wasn't a very good businessman, but he was a businessman. Always coming up with different schemes to get the saints to have some sort of means and build the economy in Missouri and far west. And I think that really kind of translates to, because it's really hard to read that and not go, this man was insane. Always wanted to start something. I'm like, you just literally got ran out. You've had to pull hand carts across the state, and now you're like, we need a new bank here. So a lot of people complain about that, but that's something I think that I haven't seen a lot of in the apologetics is a business analysis of Joseph Smith as an entrepreneur. So I think that definitely does play into it.
And I think a lot of it too is just, Utah is a very family-oriented place where a lot of people are on the same wavelength of figuring out how to establish generational wealth for not only their kids, but their grandkids and all of their posterity, right? And again, that can play within our religion and our beliefs as well too, is taking care of our posterity. And so that's where I think the entrepreneur side comes into play is, we're figuring out how to establish and build generational wealth where our family will never have to worry, right? And that's, the drive that I have, right, is how do I put my kids in the best situation possible financially too?
That is something that I wish that I had more say in. If I was in charge of the missionary department, something that I think would be very beneficial for missionaries is you've been living as a missionary, generally probably very frugally. You don't get a lot of money for your stipend to purchase food. You've not been doing anything. I think it would be very good to have some sort of computerized training or some sort of lessons to kind of like gear people to transitioning back into everyday life, because I really regret not doing some things. I think the one big thing that I've done that I'm glad I have was jumped into the military retirement system as early as possible. Like day one, I entered the military, I was depositing a percentage of my paycheck into a retirement account. It's not at all great, but it's better than nothing. And so learning to do things early on is, I think, the biggest thing. I kind of, I wish I did something better about that.
But at least you're doing it now. Right?
That's better late than never. But absolutely. You always see those graphs of the interplay of income and retirement and donation. Yeah. So also, I think it comes down to who you are as a person and what your bandwidth is. Because like some people just, for something in their brain, it's like a computer getting a new application and the computer just doesn't want to run it. It's always buggy. It's always freaking out. And I feel like for me, there's some things that I get and I'm like, I have no idea. It's kind of beyond me. Like for instance, YouTube. I had a YouTube account back in 2004. Did I have the idea of posting videos on there? No, I'm not. I know for me, I'm not an early adopter. The closest I've gotten to that is having TikTok, because I've been in Japan for 6 years and it was everywhere. So
that's right. Yeah,
I think that's it's a bit different. And where I think I'm going with this rant is opening yourself and learning. You said you recommend just starting and getting an LLC going. Have you worked, without going into details, have you worked with somebody that's basically like, look, I have $1,000. I have this idea. How does somebody with very minimal means get to start pushing on these things?
Yeah. So there's a business phrase we like to use, which is OPM, right? Is other people's money, right? And so when I started business myself, bro, I didn't have good credit. I didn't have any money, right, or a lot of money to start working with. But when I started to understand the game of leveraging, right, which goes back to why everyone should have an LLC, is because you can really leverage other people's money, being the banks, on a brand new LLC and an EIN number, right? The EIN number is the social security number for your business, right? So if you don't have good personal credit, everyone has this fixed mindset where, oh, I can't do nothing because I don't have any credit, I don't have any money. No, that's just your fixed mindset that you have, right? You can absolutely do things like file yourself an LLC, go to the irs.gov, get you an EIN number, use the EIN number, and start opening up business lines of credit using specifically the EIN number, and they'll get you $100,000 with 0% interest rates and start leveraging it, right? What could you go purchase with $100,000 of credit cards or a business loan with no interest that'll start generating you passive income, right? And so it's just, that's where I started to think outside the box, and where I started to build is leveraging other people's money. And I still do that to this day. That's how I buy my real estate properties. That's how I do everything, is I exchange a dollar for a dollar, right? I use a credit card because the credit card gives me cash back. It gives me reward points on every dollar I spend. When I buy something, it's trading a dollar for a dollar. How do I use a credit card that gives me 5% cash back on the dollar amount? I'm going to use that to go buy my groceries and exchange it, where I get 5% on this dollar, right? I'm going to exchange a dollar for a dollar. I'm not going to use my debit card or my hardworking earning money. That's the poverty mindset that we got to get out of, is using our own hardworking money when we can be leveraging other people's money to make us more money.
Yeah, I realized a little while ago, because I got a credit report change, because that was one of the things I did early on through taxing, was like, hey, would you like to sign up for Experian? So I have an account and I go in there and check to see where things are. My credit score is doing great. My issue is like long-term procurement of money, because I am limited. My income does not increase every year. Given the inflation the last two, it's actually decreased because of some caveats with the way we get cost of living allowance out here. It's funny that I'm making more money, but I'm not with inflation. So getting to use that. But one of my credit cards, for some of the cash back, I've realized that some months, some of the incentives to use cash back are actually more rewards, to where the interest of the purchase of that credit card on whatever the asset is, I'm going to get more cash back than what I'm going to be charged for interest. So I've made money on some transactions. Yeah. And I'm like, this is cool. Doesn't happen all the time, because they do that. My credit union used to do this, but they realized people were doing it, was buying something for $50. You now have negative 50. And then what I would do is I would pay $100 onto the card. And so it would show a positive balance. And so they don't allow that anymore, because they had a board meeting and they didn't like that people were doing that so often. But it was nice while it lasted. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. There's, so back in 2021 COVID? Yeah, or 2020 when COVID was big and the whole GameStop thing. I have been trading and doing stocks for some time, but not very well. And I'm not, honestly, I should just pay somebody else to do it at this point, just because I don't have the time investment to put into it. Because you have to sit there and read and look up and do some analysis on companies and where they're going. Right now, my method is just investing into mutual funds, because that's what's kept my money that I have invested into the stock market from crashing with the recession that we're going through right now. But I had a coworker, and I was explaining to him what option trading was. And this man is older. His wife is from the Philippines. He was about 19 years in, 20 years in to the military. So he was talking about retiring. And we were just chatting one day about what option trading was. And I saw a YouTube video that explained it like option trading is like wanting to go and buying a house in a neighborhood, and you sign a contract to purchase that house, or you have the option to purchase that house within a period of time, or you have an option to sell that house within a period of time. And no matter what the money is doing, you will buy that house at a low price or sell that house at a high price. And he was like, oh, that's interesting. He came back the next day, and I realized I created a monster, because he was just overwhelming me with information. So much so that he came in and he showed me this spreadsheet, and it was like that scene from Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he's like, look, I'm telling you, you need to take all your money and you need to throw it on AMC and GameStop right now. I'm telling you. I'm like, dude, you're getting very kind of crazy crackhead vibes right now. And it made me nervous, because you didn't know about this a week ago, and you've been binging courses on option trading. And this kind of scares me. You're the guy you don't take to Las Vegas, and I regret not listening to him. He rolled over, I want to say, about $30,000 from one of his Les Schwab accounts, and he threw it all on GameStop and AMC. He comes in one day and he shows me his Robinhood account, and it's $799,000. And I look at him and I'm like, my brother in Christ, get out while it's good. He's like, no, man, I've done that. My Excel sheet shows that this could be 1.2 million. We just need it to get. I'm like, no, bro, you don't understand, dude. But that's the risk that you play in stock market, and it's just interesting. And in his case, he understood everything that's about investing and was able to apply it. At the end of the day, I think he only took home about 200,000. But that was 200,000 he didn't have before. So, so it's interesting how people can absorb stuff and just hit the ground running with it. And meanwhile, you've got, no matter how many ways you break it down, they just can't process it. So, so you're encouraging for people to do LLCs. Would you ever encourage someone not to, or the benefits outweigh the cons?
Yeah, the benefits outweigh the cons for sure. There's never a reason why you shouldn't. And again, an LLC can be as simple as, Logan NS Management LLC, right? And there's specific terminologies that you could use to attach to your LLCs that will maximize the funding amounts for institutions, right? And so there's a lot of certain types of LLCs that you should avoid, and then there's a lot of LLCs with specific names that banks will give more funding to because of what's attached to the LLC, right? So you can structure the LLC properly, where you can really maximize the funding amount that you receive from an institution. Right. And so it comes down to how you structure the LLC is what's most important. So.
I noticed it's gotten very dark there for you.
Let me go turn on my porch light real fast.
Okay.
Sorry, that sun kind of disappeared pretty quick.
No worries. I was like, we can't see you. It's like those news interviews where they blur out the guest.
Yeah. It's like a unlocked character in Mortal Kombat.
I might use that as my headliner app for this episode. I think that'd be pretty funny, interviewing an alias. But I know for me right now, my big passion in life is hobbies. I get addicted to certain things, and sometimes that fixation becomes a hyper fixation. I know everything about it, and then I get into it. So the two big things I've been doing when I'm not at work or when I'm not doing schoolwork are this podcast was primarily one of them. I'm supposed to be putting out some blogs and episodes and more monologues, but I've been trying to grow its viewership because I feel like the messages and conversations we're having are important. And then on the flip side, I've also been doing a music project, which is a progressive Christian metal. And I've been sinking a lot of time into there. And out of the two hobbies, podcasting is the cheapest. I have a financial Excel tracker that I've been tracking how much money I've been spending on music. And I want to say right now I'm just under $3,000 of investment into things just because it quickly goes. And it's a hard industry to be in. My goals per se are not to be famous touring like Metallica or other major rock bands, but just to get my music out there and heard by those that can be impacted by it. And so one of the things I was looking at was actually selling some merchandise through Nauvoo Supply Company. And I've tried to get him on here, but he's pretty all over the place too, because he's running his own business. But Nauvoo Supply, if you haven't heard about it, it's like a Etsy for members of the church.
Okay.
And kind of more original. Before Etsy allowed Chinese manufacturers to come in and artificially flood the market with cheap knockoffs that were not handcrafted. So everything on Nauvoo Supply Company is made by saints or Christians and sold to saints and Christians for a reasonable price. And so he's kind of growing it.
Wow.
I was thinking about maybe doing some band T-shirts or something on there. So I'm curious. I'll talk to the wife and look at potentially generating an LLC to do that, to sell merchandise on the website, to then use that into funding
and
music.
Yeah, and the business doesn't need to generate income for you to go get funding, right? You can like if I have 7 LLCs. And only 4 of them make income, right? If I can get approved on one LLC, I can get approved on all 7 LLCs. Right? So you can really maximize, right? You can get an LLC strictly for funding, right? You can go and not even worry about generating income on this podcast, right? For example, and open up an LLC and call it, Logan Podcast LLC Management, whatever. And because you have the word management in there, it'll be easy for you to go to like a Navy Federal Credit Union, open up a business bank account, put in a couple $100 in that bank account, and then apply for a $25,000 credit card with no interest. Right? You don't need to show that you're generating revenue in order to go get $25,000 tomorrow.
I'm writing down a note real fast because I had an idea. I'll definitely message you afterwards to talk to you more from your aspect, because now I'm kind of curious. Because I know with my wife and I, we're trying to do some certain things, but we hope to be able to get her up and running on working. Because right now the biggest thing is she doesn't have a green card, and for a country that prides itself on immigrants, it sure treats them terrible. And it's just a ridiculous process. Like, I'm still waiting on the IRS to get back to me. It's been 14 weeks now since I sent them some paperwork and haven't seen a peep in the mail about it. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So
she could essentially file herself an LLC to American Samoa, because you don't need to be a U.S. citizen to file yourself an LLC. and still get her EIN number, which would be considered her business social security number, where she could use that business social security number to go get fundings. So that's, just another way around where she could start maximizing her funding to go do what she wants to do, right? And start generating her
income that way.
Yes.
Because when it comes to social media, she's far more successful. She blew up during COVID with what she runs. I don't want to name drop her application because that's her thing, or her social media tag. But she's been very successful on that. So
there you go. Okay.
It's very interesting. But yeah, that's some interesting things to kind of think about. And what I think is more interesting to our the personality types of people who are in business are very well studied, tend to be out of the box thinkers or A-type personalities. Those are the two kind of things you have going on. With the Briggs-Myers-Stratton 16 personalities, I know that there's specifics within the framework of the personality that are specifically attracted to business, just about it. I think it's just kind of interesting with how people can get into it. And I think a big thing that we're going through is our parents grew up in a different time where you went and worked at a company for 20 years. If you worked hard and were loyal, the company was loyal to you. But we're not seeing that. And I can't remember the term of what it's called, but it's basically, you see the videos where the dude's like, I worked as a data analysis at this one company. I was making $40,000. I put in an application after 2 years of experience, and I'm now working for $60,000. And they just keep changing jobs every few years, building up that thing. So there's a lot of different approaches that are non-traditional in that sense, because at the end of the day, like you said, these companies just don't care anymore. The second that they can sacrifice any amount of ethics that they had to make sure that their pockets are fuller at the end of the day, they will do it. There's a documentary about the pharmaceutical company, the Sackler family, who pushed OxyContin, and how devious they were in that. For instance, they came up with a marketing campaign that was hammer the addict, and basically it was gaslighting them like, oh, they're just an addict, they're just an abuser of these drugs. Not that we're unethically pushing doctors and sitting in sexy, candidly dressed sales folks to go and push these drugs to these doctors and to hyper encourage them to over prescribe these medications. So you have these very different takes on business, and it's really good to see somebody trying to be ethical out there. So, I think I've asked a lot of good questions for you. If you were to give some general advice to somebody who has started a business, they've gone through this process, they've got an LLC, but they can't seem to be generating. How would you navigate that? Almost like you're on a boat, but there's no wind. They've gotten the boat, they're out in the water, and now there's no wind.
I tell a lot of our clients that, because I get a lot of questions in regards to, hey, I only have, what would you do if you only had $5,000 in your account? Or what would you do if you only had $1,000 in your account? Where would you put that money? And my first response to that would be to always, always, always invest into yourself first, right? I study religiously every single morning. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I watch my YouTube videos. I read my books, right? I'm constantly studying credit cards. I'm constantly studying banks and how they operate. Where I started to figure all this out was I started to take a look at during COVID and during the recession, who is constantly making money? And it was the banks, right? And so what I started to study was, okay, how do you become the bank, right? Hashtag BYOB is what we call it.
Become your own bank.
Become your own bank. And that's what I studied hard, is how to become my own bank. Because I understood the laws of money is the person that gives the money has the power. The person that takes it has no power, right? And so to become the bank is what I figured out. And understanding that there are three types of people when it comes to money: the debtor, the saver, and the wealth creator. Right? The debtor is always chasing debt-free dreams. The saver is hoarding all of the cash, but missing out on opportunities. The wealth creator never stops growing their money. Right? So it's one thing understanding how to make six figures. It's one thing to understand how to keep six figures. And that's another thing to understand. And this is where I would say 90% of entrepreneurs don't know how to do. And that's how do you grow your six figures, right? And that's what makes or breaks a seven-figure, eight-figure earner, is understanding the concept of growing your money. After you've made it, you've kept it, now figure out how to grow it tax-free, right? It's one of the biggest scams. The two biggest scams are 401ks and taxes. So, and that's just my personal opinion. And so figuring out, pull the layers back and figure out, how do you become your own bank? How do you never stop growing your income? So that would be my advice, is figure that part out and you'll be okay.
You mentioned something, and in that analogy, I really want to say that is very akin to in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, chapter 25. And again, to my listeners, I do apologize. I do bring this up too much. It's a personal favorite, but it's for the kingdom of heaven is a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And to one he gave 5 talents, and to another 2, and to another 1, every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. And that he had received the 5 talents, went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents, and likewise had received 2. He also gained 2. But he that had 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of the house cometh and reckoneth with them. And he that received 5 talents came and brought the 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliveredst unto me 5. Behold, I gained beside them 5 more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. And he who had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 talents besides them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I'll make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou the joy of thy Lord. And then he that received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, that is thine. And the Lord said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knowest that I reap where I sow not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, then at my coming I should have received my own usury. Take the talent from him and give it to him which has 10 talents. And then to everyone that's been given, he shall have abundance, but from him who hath not shall be taken away from which he hath. It felt very close to that.
Yeah.
And there's so many lessons you can draw from that. And in this case, talent was physical money. But in your case, yeah, there are three people. You have the guy that goes out and brings back double of what he had, the same, not as much, and then you have the person who's been given and just out of fear buries it, because I think it can, in this situation, I think that there might be a lot of hesitancy in starting a business.
Yeah.
I have a friend who was a school teacher. He actually has one of his episodes on here. He started a company called Home Advantage, ED Vantage, and it's to teach parents the skills necessary to start homeschooling. He and his wife felt very inclined to leave everything they had in California and move all the way out to Arkansas. And while there, he was hunting for jobs, couldn't find one, and just felt very inclined to start this business. And I've been seeing him get off the ground running, providing these different materials. So,
I just to add to that, I think the scarcity mindset comes from starting a business and investing, because there's a lack of understanding on how to protect those funds. Right. And that's where the wealth creator comes into play, where you need to have things in play, right, where you can essentially allocate money and funds to that's insured and protected, and always compounding. Right. And so that's what I'm big on. And that's what I teach a lot of our clients. Again, I met with, again, I won't say his name, but he just had $1 billion in net worth. And I met with him and I taught him how to essentially compound interest his money, how to grow it, how to protect it, how to insure it. And he told me, he's like, Jordan, man, I just paid someone $250,000 to teach me what you taught me in 15 minutes. Right. And it's how to protect the back end. It's how to protect the fulfillment, where you're never losing the dollar amount, right? You need to understand the value of the dollar and how to protect it and grow it before you start your business, right? And there's a business saying that I'll get a lot of people that come to me, they pitch me their business ideas, they want feedback. And the number one thing I always say is you need to see the end before the beginning in business, right? What does the end goal look like? What's the whole purpose of your business, your podcast? What is the purpose? Right? What's the end goal here? And once you can map out what the end goal is, then you can reverse engineer everything backwards, because you know what the end result is, right? And so you need to see the end before the beginning, and have the end. That's where you start first, is the end. Have everything in play, have everything ready, and then you reverse engineer, and then you create, and then you build to accomplish that end goal, right? So.
In the military, for our annual performance reviews that are pretty important to promote, you have 4 quarters in a year, and you have opportunities within each quarter to outperform your peers. It gets very, very competitive, and it's kind of grueling and hard. You spend all this time doing it. And so one of the classes I went to, this individual was talking about that, planning ahead. What he would do is he would go, what am I going to do within a year? And he would write down 500 community hours or 200 community hours. I'm going to volunteer at the base level. I want to do this within this organization. And then what he would do is he would then break that down into 4 quarters and tackle that big task with smaller tasks, and really learning that. And so I heard it, I didn't apply it, and this year I've been applying it. And I actually just went and met with my school mentor, trying to do that. And I showed her, and she was shocked that I did that, because I've been applying what she's been giving me as well, for kind of improving myself and to really set myself up, because eventually one of these days I'm not going to be in the military, whether it's at the end of 20 or whether it's at the end of 14 when my current contract is up, 14 years in, or I can choose to stay in for 20 or even longer. It's going to I'm going to leave the military. And so setting myself up for success, I have to learn how to look down the road 5 years and plan things adequately to address those issues. And one of the things that you need to learn is obviously networking, but approaching things differently, because it can be pretty difficult. Because if you go and talk to the average person and say, I need you to do 500 hours in community service, that's a pretty massive task. That's about 8-ish hours a week of community service in 52 weeks. But 8 hours is not as bad. And what if I ask you, maybe do that, 2 or 3 hours every other day or something? It makes that task a lot easier. So,
reverse engineering. Reverse engineering is how you can build something meaningful that's genuine. And everything that we try to build is first and foremost service. Is the product that we're providing, does it provide service? Will it help people's lives? Will it bless people's lives? Yes, right? And if all of that checks off, then we have something that's great. Like, we have a great product, right? Solar is meant to save money. Credit repairs to fix credit. Funding is to put people in a better situation financially so that they can start making passive income. LLCs, that's where you start for funding. Right? So everything that we try to ever come up with is for a bigger goal. And the goal is always service for me. Is I want to make an impact. I want to help my community better understand financial literacy. Just because we were never taught all of these things. We were taught that credit cards were a bad thing, that loans were a bad thing. If you're irresponsible, yes, right? But it's just comes from education, right? Is educate us on why leveraging other people's money is beneficial. That'll put us in a better situation financially, right? So we have this big goal is to make an impact, to serve our community, and now it's just reverse engineering and figuring out how to accomplish that goal. So,
I watched a YouTube short, and I don't remember his name. You probably do, but he was talking about how he created one of the world's leading companies for selling coconut water. And it turns out he's good friends with the actor Matt Damon. And he didn't mean to, but he was in a business meeting asking about funds, and the funder was like, why would people want coconut water? That seems so silly. So what he asked Matt Damon to do was like, hey, Matt, I have a favor. Can you please go into your backyard, climb the coconut tree, chop the coconut down, take it down, bring it in the house, shuck it, chop it open, put a straw in it, and give it to your daughter, but you film it and send me that recording. And it said it took him about 15-ish minutes to do that. And what he did was he showed the investor the problem. Coconuts, people who have access to coconuts, it takes work to get the coconut water. And by selling people the coconut water, you're giving them that water without all that extra effort. And so what he did was he showed the problem he's trying to fix with his business. Because I think a lot of what he was saying was a lot of people show a solution, but they never show the problem that solution is answering. And what he did was the opposite, to show, like, in a very interesting way, Matt Damon giving his daughter some coconut water, which seems pretty small thing to do, but it demonstrated that there could be a market of people that would like to get access to coconut water without having to do that, plus all the people who don't have coconut trees nearby. So I think that's taking I think that's really, really interesting, different ways to approach the same commonality. So are you a big fan of that show, Shark Tank?
I've seen some clips here and there, like on Instagram and TikTok. But I've never like really sat down and watched and watched the show. I don't get to watch a whole lot of TV.
Yeah, most people in your situation are not TV watchers.
Yeah, I don't get to watch a whole lot of TV. The free time that I have, I try to just hang out with my kids, and I'll play video games here and there with them. But yeah, no, I do enjoy seeing a lot of the clips that I see from Shark Tank on social media.
There's one video. I don't remember the guys. I'm terrible with names. The fact I remember your name says a lot. But anyway, it's interesting that there's some people will go on the show and the investors are like, wait a minute, you've been on here a couple times before. So it just shows that some people are like that dog, that persistent dog that's just going to go get that rabbit. It doesn't care what's in its way. It's going to go get it. And developing that. There's a lot of different ways to approach this topic. It's pretty expansive. I think we've covered a lot of different things. I've taken up quite a bit of your time now, and it's pretty dark out there now. Do you think we're good to go ahead and close it? And if so, what are your thoughts, and how can people find you?
First and foremost, thank you so much for allowing me and inviting me on your podcast. Super grateful for this opportunity to be seeing you again, Logan. I so badly want to call you Elder Ennis.
It's so hard. That's the hardest part.
Hard. Yeah. So I have a few of my companions that or former companions that now work for me. And every time I see that,
it's a little elder slip.
Yeah, it's like, but I still call them by their last name. I just don't say the elder part, but I call them by their last name. That's why I have a handful of former companions that work for me, and but I'm super grateful again for this opportunity to be on your podcast, Logan, and I wish all the success, and feel free to always reach out to me. Again, we want to provide service, to the world and make an impact on the community on how we can better help people or assist people, teach people financial literacy. And again, I'm always learning. I'm still growing. But thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's kind of been hard. I haven't kept up with a lot of people from the mission as much as I would like. And also, yeah, it is kind of weird. But you went home and people started calling you Jordan again, where I went home and people started calling me Airman Ennis, or now it's now Sergeant Ennis. So when it's gotten to the point where I'm sort of disconnected with my first name, Logan. I'm like, who's that? It's a little weird, but it's different. And our mission president, anytime he communicates with me, I'm like, hey, President, sorry. He'll always be president.
Being President Hostapel, he's over our state. So he speaks a lot at our state conference. And
that's a treat.
Just recently, this is a funny story real quick, is he came and spoke. Like, we had a state conference. We had the adult session on Saturday night. He was speaking at the state conference, and I walk in probably 30 minutes late, and I was in the very, very, very back. And at the Polynesian steak, it's ginormous. So I walked in the very, very back, and I sat right in front of the stage in the gym. That's how far back I was. It was me and my wife. And President Hostapel sees me walking in the very back, and he stops the entire state conference and walks off the pulpit, walks to the very back of the state conference, and just gives me the biggest hug and starts taking selfies. He's taking selfies of me to send to his wife. sisterhood staff that wasn't there. And he's just in tears, and we're just having this bromance moment in the middle of and everyone is looking like, what is going on? He just gave me a hug for 3 minutes straight. Then he whips out his camera and he starts taking stuff. He's like, "Oh, Pili, come on. I need to send these to my wife." So he starts taking all these photos, and I'm just, my face was red. Everyone was looking at me because I already showed up late. And then he walks back up to the pulpit, and then he finishes his talk. So
that man is a treasure.
He's amazing.
So, he's also a person that has been a pretty big mentor of how to treat people that and like. He, I don't know how he keeps. I swear he has a eidetic memory. He remembers everything you've ever said. Because he's like, "Hey, how's graduate school going?" I'm like,
"Yeah."
I forgot I'm in graduate school. But yeah, I love him. That's a great story. He's a great caliber of a person as well. But
he's the best.
So if somebody wanted to reach out and get with you, what resources, I will make sure they're included in the show notes on the podcast episode so people can hyperlink those. But for those who don't have that.
Yeah, I do a lot of my content. Again, I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone and do more content. It's very new to me, but I know that I have to do it. And it's so I do a lot of content on TikTok, is where I have a lot of engagement with, those that follow me. I respond very quickly in the DMs and comments. And so if you wanted to find me, it's just at Wave Capital Investments on TikTok. Just Wave, WAVE, Capital Investments.
Wave Capital Invest.
And they can watch a lot of my content. I post content every single day on TikTok. And I'm pretty good at responding to all of the messages that come in.
Cool. I just followed you on there. I was following you on Instagram, but you're also on Instagram as well. But TikTok is interesting. I said we're going to hang up the call, but TikTok is very interesting. I think the biggest issue why Congress was wanting to prevent it is not that it's very what's the word? Intrusive, because all the other applications, if you read the terms and services and read the third party analysis, are just as bad as TikTok for stealing your privacy and sharing your data. Like Facebook just lost nearly $1 trillion lawsuit. They're all terrible. I think the issue is people are upset about how much money is being generated on TikTok, and they don't have their fingers in that pot of honey per se. So it's very interesting. For the music scene, they're going to be dropping TikTok music, which is going to take that kind of algorithm and turn it into like an Apple or Spotify that's more interactive. And so that's going to kind of revolutionize that. So I've just been trying to gear towards that and get things set up. But before I start rambling on, man, I thank you so much, Jordan, for coming on here. I'll make sure I get you the link of this podcast episode, and you have a great night. Thank you for your time, and give the best to the missus and the kids for allowing me to steal you for a few.
Will do. Thank you so much, and give your wife my love as well.
All right. Thanks, man. Bye.
All right, brother. Bye-bye.